This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by LRN.FM. Feds don't want you to hear them. All right, my fellow liberty rebels. More headlines from the authoritarian fighting front lines. But these are not the headlines you would see in the paper. New Hampshire's Makris Lobster and Steakhouse in Concord. I think they have been getting some videos, imagine that, who knew, of their interactions with Karen bureaucrats. So this is the big thing that people are just forgetting to do all over the state and all over the country. The obvious, simple thing that no one ever seems to remember to do. Videotape these parasites when they approach you. Audio tape them. Tell them you're doing it. Put their authoritarian freak asses on BitChute. Make the cockroaches run from the light of day. But anyway, there's not a whole lot to... the one that I saw, the video wasn't all that interesting. There was some bureaucrat, with his stupid little lanyard thing hanging around his neck telling him, I just want to give you some information. Wasting your money telling them that. The important thing is they're getting video. And are you? I bet you're not. If you Google search New Hampshire COVID or something like that or New Hampshire recent videos on YouTube, you should find an endless slew of us liberty activists documenting these authoritarians coming to our businesses and blocking our roads and stopping us from filming politicians and all the other stuff that they do. Because this isn't a paradise yet, right? Just because we call it the Free State doesn't mean it's perfectly free. Anyhow, Makris Lobster and Steakhouse. I guess some of the folks at Reopen are calling on liberty activists to patronize this business for its practice of standing up to the authorities. I guess the other thing that's happening with them is that they are apparently... Makris Lobster House. I guess a woman came in allegedly harassing customers while they were eating because they weren't wearing masks while they were eating. She allegedly harassed the staff after that and then has threatened to call the government, of course. That's what Karens do. Hey, I've noticed something else that's happened, though, that's more positive during the crisis, and that is that prices, it seemed to me like prices were allowed to rise pretty fast. By April, I think that whole price gouging thing, people kind of weren't talking about that much anymore. I'm glad prices were allowed to rise because it allows things to stay on store shelves and for supply and demand to meet. And of course, when I say stay on store shelves, I mean they stay on store shelves long enough that people actually have a shot at buying them without entering the store during its first 5 minutes of operation during the morning. I've queried New Hampshire State Rep and Free Stater Michael Sylvia regarding the level of access that is available to the state legislature as it meets in these giant buildings that it's renting out at your expense. He says, quote, the public has a room out front where they can watch a monitor of the session. Legislators enter in the back from a couple of parking areas. No public allowed, and lots of cops last time. It would make good video of the dopes getting their temperature taken and submitting to questioning. Effing sad video. Screening happens in the parking lot. Unquote. So the important part there is the no public allowed part, right? I mean, are you not allowed to even walk up within 20 feet of a state rep as they walk into this building and ask them questions? Some of you may be aware, of all these shadow bans that YouTube is undertaking where they take people like me who had, about, probably 2,000 hits per video as of early 2019. And just shut me down to where that's more like 200 hits per video. And this is the second basically just one day to the next. My traffic was cut by about 80%, And this is the second time that's happened. They did it to me in 2013, too, where they took me down from about 4,000 hits a day to, well, about 4,000 hits per video to 2,000 hits per video. Or really, it was more like, it's more like the whole channel was getting, I guess, about 8,000 hits, and they took it down to maybe about 4,000 hits a day. I forget the exact numbers. But anyway, in reaction to that, I'm continuing my campaign to try and increase my hits any way I ethically can. One thing I've done is reached out to the Free State Project. As you may be aware, freestateproject.org used to have sort of a feed of Free State news that would run on the front page. And so they'd just take like the Free Staters who were doing their own media, sort of independent of the Free State Project, and they would just forward that on to the public. So every time you went to the Free State Project website, you'd see lots of fresh New Hampshire liberty news from usually within just a day or two. I have requested that the Free State Project renew this practice so that they're promoting liberty media, since YouTube is covering us up. And, of course, as you may be aware, Free Talk Live has been taken off some stations because of their stance on the COVID, their belief that social distancing is nonsense. Right or wrong? I've also reached out to infowars to see if we can cross-promote each other, and but in both cases, I really haven't received a substantive response yet, and it's been about a week or two. By the time this video airs, that may have changed. But if you produce liberty and media in New Hampshire, obviously this would help you as well as me if they were to start promoting us. It seems like we're getting just too spread out, too disconnected. I have some more predictions, some of which may have already come true, related to how things will continue to play out during the crisis of 2020. Related to the Floyd protests and the BLM resurgence, Black Lives Matter, two things will probably happen. I think what we will see is a downward pressure on police killings and police violence, police overstep, whatever you want to call it. The police are going to get pretty cautious, I think, if they haven't already. And it's just going to become sort of a trendy, meme-y thing for people to publicize bad police behavior, even more than they used to. On the other hand, it's interesting how so many people have sort of taken this over, and it's to them, it doesn't really even seem like a police brutality issue. It's all a race issue. And the racial component of this, while it's going to be great to have more cautious police, the renewed focus on racism, well, America was already obsessed with racism in 2019 and in 2011 and in 2001. It's the national obsession. It was already pretty easy to get people fired from their jobs for even vaguely racist statements. People were already walking on eggshells in 1995. Pushing that pendulum further in that direction is not going to be helpful. Having more inclusion lectures at work and on the front page of every other website you visit, that also is not going to be helpful. That was already being done, right? That was already being tried. We were already getting plenty of lectures. Thank you. This additional obsessing and picking at the racial scab, unlike actually saving black people from being harmed by actual bad guys, will simply create more tension, and for the most part, and you will see. I think this will create more tiki torch, parades where you see actual white supremacists marching down U.S. streets. Who might not have done that if it hadn't been for the additional haranguing and shaming of what, on their part, is only a viewpoint, right? Until they've actually taken some action or told someone to take some action, those racists, who I don't like either, are just talk. and just thought. Talk and thought are supposed to be protected in the United States. If we are to fight the racists, as maybe we are in some instances, in some cases, let's fight them over their actions, not their talk. Or if we have a problem with their talk, then the solution is talk. Anyway, no aggression, no grievance. So if someone's just posting some whining on their website, or they're doing some virtue signaling, that really is just talk. It's just signaling. It's not something it's not a war crime, right? But that is my talk about this talk. Oh, going back to the YouTube shadow ban issue, since all of you are or should be media producers in some way, right? Because all of you have interactions with the police, right? And you're all getting out your cell phones and recording this, right? And uploading it to the internet, right? Well, here's what's worked for me in that process as I've tried to independentize myself from YouTube. I guess around March of 2020, I expanded into Metacafe, BitChute, Facebook. All three of those I was directly uploading my videos. Now Facebook, strangely enough, has been actually pretty tolerant over the years. I've only had one problem with Facebook in my whole Facebook career since 2009, where they wanted my driver's license to prove that I was me. But they're actually much less... They seem to be less censorship-oriented and less deletion-oriented and less shadow-banny than YouTube. However, in 2016, I uploaded quite a few, around that area, I uploaded a fair number of videos to Facebook just to kind of test it out. And they would always tell me how many hits I was getting. The number was always satisfactory. I might get 800 hits on a YouTube video and then 100 hits on Facebook. That was enough. And sometimes it was, significantly more. Now they won't tell me how many hits I'm getting, and I don't get a lot of comments when I upload a video to Facebook, but it still seems to be worth doing. BitChute is pretty good. BitChute, if I upload a video, that would have gotten me 4,000 hits on YouTube, over a 1 year period, a year ago, that type of video will get about 100 hits on BitChute over a 1 year period. Maybe I should say more like 200 hits over a 1 year period. No censorship at all. Small number of comments. It's one of those things that if you use it, you will want to hope that it gets bigger over time. And you will have to tolerate people commenting about Jews on your video, which has nothing to do with Jews. Well, actually, you don't have to tolerate it. I suppose you could delete the videos, but such comments, you could delete the comments, but such comments will occur. The other thing that seems like it should work for you, because it certainly works for me, is, or at least it seems to, I'm starting to post links to my videos on the few remaining good web forums in the country. Smaller web forums. I'm not talking about Reddit. And when I post on Reddit, no one ever seems to see what I posted. But there are places where you can post things and get them seen. I'll try to post a link in the video description here for this video/audio, and it'll have a link to the good web forums that are out there. Northeast Shooters in New England is a good place for New Hampshire discussion still. ShireSociety.com has a forum. It gets about 2 posts a day, better than nothing. RonPaulForums.com is still functional and active. BitcoinTalk.org still active. ObjectivistLiving.com and FreedomForum.com, with a 4. These are all still useful web forums, and it took me a while to figure that out. But they're pretty good in-runs around the establishment social media. They've survived the great culling of web forums. Sort of like Dash and Ethereum survived the great culling of altcoins in the 2015 era. although there's not a ton of activity there, it would be great to have you posting on forum.freestateproject.org. That's a place where historically, like anything, if you posted something there in 2002, it's still there at the same link, I think. So it's a great place for things to stay for a long time, it appears. And over long periods of time, you do get a lot of views on your posts. Of course, it's possible that some of those are bots. The more I see you posting there, the more I will post there. Right now, I'm reluctant to post more than a few times a month because it starts looking like the Ridley show. You know, like there's no one there except for me. Hey, I wanted to recommend a good person to listen to if you would like a non-libertarian but brilliant take on the future, on economics and so forth. His name is Jim Rickards. You may have already heard of him. He's sometimes a guest on Ron Paul's show. He used to work for the CIA, creating like economic warfare simulations in their war room, and some of his observations are just fantastic about the way people would react when he like, what? Okay, so we're gonna play this game, and I'm playing Russia. Okay, I'm gonna put Russia on the gold standard. Well, the referees would say, oh no, you're not allowed to do that. Nope, that doesn't make any sense. You can't. That's how they would deal with gold. They would make it illegal to bring into the game, right? That's how scared they are of it. But he wrote a book called Currency Wars, in the 2012 era. And I was listening to him, in the 2019 era quite a bit, listening to his predictions about the economic collapse and the way it would play out. And one of the things he said that was kind of interesting, he said, I think we're going to get back to a situation where kind of the economy of the world, it's working a little, your neighborhood, it's going to be kind of like 19th century New Hampshire. And, it's hard to remember exactly what people said, back in the day and when you were listening to their audio while you were out exercising or something. But it seems like not only did he get, he predicted the Trump election accurately, and it seems like the way he predicted the current economic crisis seems to be accurate. And the two things he's predicting now that are interesting, and he was actually predicting these as late, I think in 2018, but he was predicting around 2018, maybe even earlier, that we would probably have a major shooting war. And that is because he says if you get a currency war, and then now it's followed by a trade war, this is what follows those two things, right? So give him a listen. He's a little bit arrogant. He doesn't like Bitcoin. His prediction is in 2019, his prediction was $200 Bitcoin in 2020. So I think that will probably be a failed prediction, but I'm hearing him out, and I'm definitely taking steps to make sure that if Bitcoin, I think it could go as low as 1100. There's this theory that it will fall on its ass before it gets up and really, really shines. And I think that there's a good possibility that actually will happen. When you see the next market crashes, that should have a negative impact on Bitcoin, because it always has in the past. Can't be sure, but anyway. So it's just he's good to listen to for just an alternate viewpoint to the normal Free Stater echo chamber and the Libertarian echo chamber that many of us tend to live in if we don't make ourselves not live in it. Anyway, we're not living in an economic collapse that was brought on by COVID. It was a collapse that was already underway, and which COVID is being used as an excuse to sort of cover up why it really happened, and it is an exacerbating factor. And Rickards is probably right. We probably do get a war. Now, as we're getting deeper into this, it looks like it'll be a war between the United States and China, one in which China is actually the aggressor. For the first time, the Americans are in a war that they're not not the aggressor. First time since at least 1999. Maybe 2001 if you count Afghanistan. You can almost count Afghanistan, I guess. Well, ultimately, since governments wage wars against civilians more than they do against other governments, all wars and all factions are sort of aggressors. But that doesn't mean one side is not more of an aggressor than the other. And China, it really looks like they're out of control. It looks like finally the feds have found, if they're interested in taking advantage of it, they have finally found an actual threat overseas that can really endanger the American people without nukes. And, you know, there is a very plausible scenario in which they win. I don't think they will, but it's plausible, it's possible, because they have, they understand the importance of developing strong AI, and they will act recklessly, pushing in that direction, and they'll create something that's incredibly powerful, you know, if they're not beat to the punch. They see the AlphaGo victory, you know, where a non-Chinese institution was able to build a Go-playing computer that does it better than humans in a very sophisticated game. That was supposedly their Sputnik moment, and so now they are putting everything they can into winning the AI race, which is the only race that counts, ultimately. They have a strong economy and workforce and technology base and so forth. It's intact at the moment. It's gradually probably being damaged by the totalitarian government that has come back into action. So they will sense that they have a short time window in which to finish this project. They will be descending deeper and deeper into Soviet status, like old, you know, 1980s Soviet decay status, the more authoritarian they get. At least, I think that's how it will play out. But, you know, in 1989, I thought, you know, this isn't really going to work. This whole business of trying to be economically free, but politically locked down, I don't think they can do it, and I don't think we should let them get away with it. That's back in the days when I was more of a neocon. I actually literally screamed at the top of my lungs at my television set while I was watching the Tiananmen Square massacre. But they pulled it off, you know, for 20, 30 years. They did very effectively at increasing their level of economic freedom without really allowing a ton of political freedom. Although they did get more political freedom out of it. And they still have a lot more political freedom than they did in '89. It seems like they are taking such a devil-may-care approach to world opinion that they're going to unite a lot of really powerful countries against them. And they are having the effect on me of making me think, well, oh, yeah, how do I participate in this effort against the Chinese Communist Party? Whereas before, I didn't really see them as much of a threat. You know, I just saw this country that was gradually, you know, evolutionizing toward more and more freedom and having a lot of prosperity and wasn't behaving particularly badly, you know, on the international scene. That's out the window. That's gone. And, you know, over the years, I've thought a lot about, you know, so what do I do if we have another World War II scenario where the United States is the relative good guy? How do I make sure that I'm doing my part against the main aggressor without actually any taxpayers having to fund what I'm doing, and without me actually having to help the federal government bomb Dresden to ash or something like that? And I'm spinning up, you know, these processes. I'll do something. And you can do something too. And usually the best thing to do is just the thing that you enjoy, that's on your heart. But, sad to say, it's time to start taking a foreign threat really seriously and recognizing that as evil as the federal government is, for the moment, it seems to be on the right side of history in some ways. You know, kind of like the, I don't know, like the Bosnian government was kind of on the right side against Serbia when the Serbian army didn't really invade Bosnia officially, just sort of in reality. When that happened, I shipped medicines to Bosnia and went there twice to film documentaries. I'll be doing something in this war too. But again, we can't let ourselves fall into that trap of actually supporting the federal government, right? Or of becoming xenophobic, because we need to remember that the Chinese people are our allies for the most part. I mean, whenever you've seen them get any chance to do so, they have risen up in harmony with traditional American values. And you look all over the world where there are Chinese people that aren't inside China, well, the vast majority of those people are pretty friendly toward at least the idea of democracy, which is not a great thing, but it is, like Churchill said, currently the least bad government form, or what is it, the worst form of government on earth except for all the others. I think the things that will be in my power to do, over the next year maybe, will be I should be able to, make 30 or 40 calls to talk radio, outlining whatever I learn about the CCP presence in New Hampshire, which is not zero, by the way. I will be able to, of course, broadcast here on this channel. I would like to be able to do some ambush interviews of anyone that is receiving CCP funding. There are 2 professors at the University of New Hampshire in Durham, I think, who are funded by the Chinese government. I don't know of anything else that's going on, and it's not exactly a war crime, again, and it has received appropriate media scrutiny from the mainstream press, right? But there's these things called Confucius Institutes. They are Chi-Com funded thingies inside U.S. universities where they teach Mandarin. They can also teach other things, history and so forth. In New Hampshire's case, they've been pretty watchdoggy about this, and they have restricted them to teaching the language. And again, I think it's great. It would be wonderful to have 20 times as many New Hampshirites that speak proper Mandarin. And I doubt even the Chinese communists are going to get that wrong. And also, you never know. I mean, many of the people who were on the streets that day in 1989, or that month in 1989, those were people who were Chinese government employees, right? They were paid by the Chinese communists. They were members of the Chinese Communist Party, and they were out there on the street. So you never know. Just because someone is part of the CCP does not make them the bad guy automatically, at least not forever. Boris Yeltsin, another story. He's the communist mayor of Moscow. Well, what did he do? He had a huge role in bringing down communism. He worked from the inside and crushed those SOB totalitarians while standing on the top of a tank, right? But, that's where it starts. With a presence, as the presence gets stronger, it can get more dangerous. If you look at the Chinese embassy in Australia is now capable of having people ejected from government universities in Australia who aren't even Chinese, right? So this will spread, and as it does, the initial proper response will simply be to document and publicize the spread. More options will appear on the table as the new enemy gets closer. I guess another thing I could do, again, I'm just outlining some options here. I don't know if I'll actually be able to do all these things, but it might be possible to lobby some of the lower level billionaires or millionaires, lobby them to support America's best AI project. So I don't know which one that is. Probably the strongest one right now is Google, Google's projects, but Google is basically America's China, so America's Chinese Communist Party. So we don't really want them to win this. I think I would favor someone like Elon Musk getting there first, maybe, but that's probably the most realistic hope. I don't know how deep he is into this. The person you really want to win this race is probably Nick Bostrom, who's written entire books on the subject of how do you make an artificial general intelligence that is friendly to humanity. He is F-bombing brilliant, and his vision is very human-friendly. It's not liberty-oriented, but we'd get liberty out of it, I think. Google that guy. Listen to him. Nick Bostrom. Listen to his letter from Utopia. Oh, it's so inspirational, and it gives us a shining light on the hill to look at the end of this. And it's interesting when you actually read his book, he does not sound like a utopian at all, and he is not a utopian. His view and predictions with regard to AI are very realistic and very sober and very detailed. So when people listen to his book, for the first 6 hours or something like that, they're like, "Oh my God, there's no hope." That's the reaction you get when you listen. He's that cautious about this, but ultimately, I think he's an optimist because he does believe there are solutions. And we could see a scenario where the Chi-Coms develop an AGI, and it destroys their rule, right? Because it's like Orwell said, if you believe that 2 and 2 equals 4, and you're allowed to believe that, all the other truths follow from it. And an AI, an AGI with great powers, is going, even if it's poorly designed, it's going to believe that 2 and 2 are 5, or 2 and 2, that 2 and 2 are 4, right? And its hostility toward the Chi-Coms may follow, followed by hostility to all life on Earth, for all I know. Because, like I said, there are a ton of things you can get wrong and a ton of solutions that don't actually work when you're programming an AGI to be friendly. But I tell you what, I do not think that the Chi-Coms are going to be listening very, very closely to Nick Bostrom. We're much more likely to have an AI team here in the West or in the free world, the relatively free world, giving him his fair shot. By the way, he runs this thing called the Future of Humanity Institute. I think it's at Cambridge, or it's at a university somewhere. He's Swedish. Give him a listen or a read. That's how he became so brilliant, actually. What he does is he listens to audiobooks at like double speed, or like somewhat increased speed as he's doing other things in his life. That's how he's become as knowledgeable as he is. He can retain a lot more than most of us can, I think. All right, more later. I don't like Freedom Radio talk. Listening to LRN FM makes me balk. Far from it, I should probably walk. LRN.FM. Feds don't want you to hear them.